Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Dr. Joel Kahn. Dr. Kahn is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have him on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. The Unlock Wellness podcast is now on patreon.com. Patreon is an amazing site that allows you to support your favorite podcasts. You can learn more by going to patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson. There are even fun incentives for supporting, like shirts and stickers, so be sure to check it out. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drcaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, also be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series and learn about the Unlock Wellness Project, which supplies a wellness bag to a child in need for each book purchased. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Dr. Joel Kahn. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Dr. Joel Kahn. Dr. Kahn is founder of the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity, and he has spent 25 years improving the lives and vitality of thousands of his patients, taking many of them from chronic health issues to a new state of vibrant, healthy living. He is author of Amazon bestsellers The Whole Heart Solution and his newest book, The Plant-Based Solution. But Dr. Kahn, thank you so much for taking time to come on. It's really an honor to have you.
Well, I'm excited to beam right into Orlando and all over the world digitally, and I'm very excited to chat with you because we're talking about the most important topic, having joy in life and good health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, before we jump into all of the amazing work that you do in your newest book, let's talk about your backstory a little bit. First, where you're from, and how your own personal health journey has evolved over time to really get you where you are right now, which is, one of the top plant-based physicians in the world.
Well, that's very kind of you. And succinctly, I am unusual in that I actually began a plant-based diet, never turned back, well before medical school. And, many people have adopted the diet, thank goodness, in the last year or 5 years. But for me, it's over 40 years. I wasn't brilliant. I was just shocked by the quality of a hospital cafeteria. Actually, excuse me, I am always shocked by the quality of a hospital cafeteria and the lack thereof, but it was actually the dormitory cafeteria in freshman year in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I was with a girlfriend who's now been my wife for almost 40 years, and we started eating the salad bar and did that for about 5 years till I read a book by John Robbins, A Diet for New America, that actually explained that this choice we had made that we were feeling wonderful on. And by then I was almost done with medical school and she had finished nursing school and starting a family, but that there actually was a lot of medical, environmental, and animal rights issues behind it. We frankly were relatively naive to all that. This was, late 70s, early 80s when it wasn't real common to hear the word vegan, if at all, or plant-based or anything. So we got that all done. And the minute I started real practice of cardiology in 1990, I just kept teaching people, I've been doing this for more than a decade. It works great. Now we have data that it can actually stop this disease you came to see me for. So let me deal with what you got right now. But let me teach you how to not need me so much in the future. And that's always been the strategy ever since. It's been very joyful.
Right. So, basically you kind of did it just instinctively, right? Like it just felt right in that moment. Like all the other options just seemed
right
far off from health. I think that's amazing, especially like you said, in, that time, like the research wasn't there, the documentaries weren't there. So, that's pretty amazing though, that you had those instincts to want to take those steps when you didn't have the information rolling in like it is now.
Right. And, not everybody, it really is maybe the last 10 years that animal rights has gotten under my skin, and the ability to go online and buy non-cow leather shoes and jackets and all. And that's become very important to me. And, we didn't have much data on the environment. In fact, the environment wasn't under as much stress 40 years ago, but now we've got the USDA and the Oxford University and other august authorities telling us that we're under tremendous pressure on the environment, and plant lifestyle is the best approach to have cleaner water, cleaner air, mountains to hike on. And, I plan to be around a very long time on this planet, but I also think about what kind of world I want my grandchildren down the road, because there aren't any yet to have. And I think we all need to think about that a bit. It's a great gift. Life's a great gift. The planet we live on a great gift, and you take it for granted. But in fact, forests are shrinking, waters are dirtier, the oceans are empty, and we can turn that around. We shouldn't be complacent about it. So this is the single best decision you can make in life, is saying no to animal foods, yes to plant foods. And some people will see small advances in their health, and some will see true miracles.
Absolutely. And, for you, Dr. Kahn, what first planted that seed in your mind that cardiology was the right route that you wanted to go? Or did you go into medical school knowing that you wanted to be a cardiologist and go in that field?
Yeah. So it actually turned out when I was a very young child, I had what's called a heart murmur, and it made my mom nervous before I even had memory of all that. But I started seeing a pediatric cardiologist. Fortunately, that never resulted in any issue, but I had yearly visits and checkups and some tests. And actually, I can remember that stuff. I was just fascinated by it all. So I think that planted the seed. And then I found out of all the various disciplines in school, biology and such became sort of a more interesting than the others. So really by about age 15, I knew where I was headed, not just into medicine, with really no role model in the family. We weren't a medical family, but also specifically cardiology.
So Dr. Kahn, did you have anybody just in your family that had heart disease, or any close relatives or friends, or did you have anything like that really pushed you along too, as you were learning about just everything that you were learning about in school?
Yeah, there were actually just a couple extra influences that sealed the deal. One was to give a shout out to my mother particularly, but my mother and father as a unit for sure, is that they got the bug. My dad would rather have eaten less than perfect food, never really bad, but less than perfect. My mother had a much higher standard. And 35 years ago, they took a week and went to something called the Pritikin Longevity Center, which was at one point in Santa Monica, California, and then it moved to Miami. I think they were in California. But I just remember, my mother was a very good cook, still is, that the Hungarian beef goulash all of a sudden was a lentil loaf. And, it was fairly early, I was already starting to eat that way, but now I'd come home and actually see very creative food, sometimes more creative than I was seeing in Ann Arbor or other places. And that was an influence. And my father did have some heart disease early in life. Fortunately, never really very involved, but the idea of preventing heart disease, the fact that, it's always hard to parse out what's genetics and what is lifestyle, because sometimes families eat the same way. So
right.
Nonetheless, we worked hard at it in the family. It was very good to get on that bandwagon very early.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome that you didn't have to see that firsthand in your immediate family, because obviously in this country, we know far too many people that do. I mean, I don't think you could have a room full of people and ask them if they know anybody that has, or if they had that themselves.
Right.
Like heart disease,
I agree.
Cholesterol, high blood pressure, right? Every hand's going to go up. I mean, what's the prevalence right now? Is it 1 in 3?
Well, in terms of deaths, it's 1 in 3, and it's still number one. It actually was predicted by now. It's no great victory when we announce that cancer will have overcome heart disease, but it was actually expected that was going to happen long ago. And heart disease has great staying power, and it's still number one. Which is a shame with all the advancements we've had.
Right. I mean, we almost accept it as a norm, right? I feel like, it's it's overlooked. Just looking at what we're putting on our plates, I feel like it's overlooked so much, especially, I mean, like we were talking about before, just like in hospitals and places where it would benefit the most in their time of healing, whatever they're healing from. I mean, why do you think it's been overlooked so much? Do you think that it's all money politically based, or do you think we've just been so programmed over time to believe that it can't be that easy?
Yeah, it is really odd. And the most important message to, your listeners is what we said. It is the number one cause of death of men and women. It isn't just a man's disease, that's for sure. Number two, it's a silent disease for decades. Anybody listening says, I don't have heart disease. Why am I listening to this heart doctor? You might have heart disease. You might have it already pretty advanced, because it's at the very last stages that people start to feel short of breath, or tight in the chest, or up in the throat, or limited physical activity. But the disease has gone on for years to decades. You hear sometimes that high blood pressure is a silent killer. Well, most heart disease in general is actually silent to the very end. Many people, the first sign of heart disease, very sadly, is a heart attack they die from, is the very first identification. So that's the problem. The solution is, and this is what is puzzling, is, we have a medical system that says there's a problem called colorectal cancer, so everybody needs to get a colonoscopy every so often. We have a problem called breast cancer, so women need to get a mammogram every so often, or an MRI or a thermogram, if you like. But we have this number one gorilla of a problem, and you see your doctor and you get routine blood work and you get a blood pressure and you get told to eat healthy, whatever that might be, and you're done. And it's very inadequate. Stress testing is not the solution. Stress testing is discouraged as a screening test. You're not 45, so you automatically get on the treadmill. I mean, do it at the health club or do it in your basement. It turns out there's a CAT scan of the heart that was developed 20 years ago, is available at almost every hospital in the United States, called a coronary artery calcium scan, or heart calcium scan. Takes about 10 seconds, no IV, no injection, no iodine, no exercise, 10 seconds, not claustrophobic. And we've known from hundreds, and I think actually more appropriately to say thousands of studies, that in those 10 seconds when the results come out, you can find out immediately, I have a very youthful heart in terms of the arteries where heart attacks ultimately occur, or I don't have a youthful heart, I have an aging heart, and I need to really get serious about finding out why and develop a plan to get rid of it. That scan was developed. It used to cost over $1,000 in many cities, but in many cities now it's $50 to $75, $100. You may have to pay out of pocket. You may want to do it every 5 to 10 years. It's quite infrequent, but it is the clear path to answer the question. I wonder how I'm doing inside. Am I getting older?
Right.
You can look at your face. There actually is science that says the aging of your face. There's facial recognition software that gives you an indication. You can look at your hair, if it's graying prematurely or if you're losing it prematurely. And you can look at a little crease on your earlobe called a diagonal earlobe crease, which is actually a fairly accurate sign of premature clogged heart arteries. But if you want to confirm it, which you should, or even if you don't have those things, you go get this CAT scan at almost every medium to large hospital.
That's amazing. And I mean, you said 10 seconds?
You just hold your breath. The machine turns on, the machine turns off, and it's done.
I mean, yeah, and you're right. You don't hear that. I mean, I've heard it a few times, but like, I don't think the general public is, like you said, being pushed that option. Why do you think that that's the case?
It's unclear. Skepticism, lack of knowledge. How do doctors get educated and updated? Pharmaceutical reps, surgical reps come to the office and tell you about a new drug, new procedure, a new device.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming and educating people about a $50 CAT scan at the hospital.
Right.
It doesn't really make much profit for the hospital. I don't understand why hospitals don't put it on a billboard. It's a heart month. We're offering this special CT scan for $50. Some hospitals do that, very few, because it really drives a lot of interest and education in the community. And many people are abnormal and actually become patients of that hospital system. So it's good business. If I were a hospital administrator, I'd be promoting it. But then the second part, maybe, if you want to give the medical community credit, is that It's not clear what you do with the abnormals. What we know you need to do is quit smoking, start walking, eat plants, get sleep at night, manage your stress, and get a very advanced blood panel to find out why you're aging internally. But after that, there hasn't been definitive science that says you just got this CAT scan, you're told that you're 20 years older inside than your driver's license says. And A, B, C, D. It might be a baby aspirin a day. It might be a cholesterol-lowering medication. It might be a blood pressure-lowering medication. It's always the lifestyle, the reversal lifestyle that Dr. Dean Ornish published in 1990, or Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn published through the 1990s and up to this date and such. I don't know. Doctors are still skeptical that, what percentage of patients with adult diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, and heart disease are told that there actually might be a chance that you never need medicine again if you get serious about your lifestyle, your weight, your sleep, your stress. Very few, even though it's absolutely certain that more than half of people could get rid of the disease instead of going to the drugstore once a month and refilling the bottles.
Yeah. No, that's very true. And like, whenever if somebody were to go get that scan, what would you see on there if there was a high risk for heart disease? Is it, are you looking for the plaque in the arteries, or are there other signs as well that you've seen on the scan?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So it's called a heart calcium scan because you're supposed to have calcium in your bones and your teeth. And that's a wonderful place. And in fact, on these scans, you can see the ribs, you can see the breastbone, you can see the vertebra. There never is calcium normally in the arteries or in the valves, and that's what you're looking for. And there's a number because a computer software program analyzes the findings, and you want to be a 0. I'm proud to say I'm a 0 as I approach age 60. Awesome. That's very youthful arteries. You can be 70, you can be 80 and still be a 0. It gets less common as age goes by. But you do see other things. You see if the heart's enlarged. You see if the big blood vessel called the aorta is enlarged. You see if the lungs are clear, if the lymph nodes are clear. So some number of people find, we call them incidental findings, that can be very, very important. That's part of the extra information you get. And you got to be cautious. It's radiation, and it's a test you have very infrequently. I do it on my own health assessment about once a decade, but it's quite a amazing peace of mind to get that 0.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and I love that. I'm excited to actually research that more for myself, so I can promote it more on my end too.
My second book is titled "Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses." It just came out with a new edition a few days ago, available on Amazon and other sellers, and it pretty much lays out that whole bit of data about more aggressive understanding why we get aging arteries, a more aggressive understanding of how you can easily check. And then it goes somewhat into the program of how you work to prevent it from developing worse or even reversing it.
I love that. And to kind of go to the next question, Dr. Kahn, I mean, obviously, you and I both know how beneficial eating a plant-based diet can be for not only heart health, but your overall health. But, if somebody is just super skeptical, right? Like, what is the evidence that heart disease can be reversed with a plant-based diet?
Yeah, so there's some really wow moments. One of them, it's an observation, but when a whole country deals with heart disease, you have to stand up and say, wow. So around 1970, the country of Finland, particularly the eastern part of the country closest to Russia, had the highest heart attack rate of anywhere in the Western world. And 45-year-olds, 42-year-olds, it was not an obese country, but we're dropping dead of heart attacks. It was actually seriously affecting their economy. And there was enough known at the time to say, there are some measures we could take. So there were public health measures, first in one region of Finland called North Karelia. But as I'll tell you in a minute, they were extended to the rest of the country quickly. I demonstrated that if we just teach people, and some people listening will say egads, but hey, how about some plant-based margarine instead of butter? How about we actually have the sausage makers at the factory add some beans and oats to the sausage so there's less saturated fat and meat content? Right. How about we ask people to cut back on smoking as part of it? Of course, you always want to bring that up. And within 5 years, the heart attack rate fell by 85%. It
Wow.
wasn't a complete plant-based diet. It was a much improved diet that the public actually embraced. And when studies were done and published, the change in diet was the single most important factor. And when the whole country did it, it was about an 80% drop, and it's sustained to this day. So that's like a wow moment.
That really is.
Yeah, it really is. You can, maybe the next wow moment are the blue zones, these 5 areas in the world where the concentration of healthy people over age 100 are 10 times more than the average concentration. And in Okinawa, Japan, an island, until Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's showed up, they were some of the longest lived people in the world. And more than 95% of their calories were from plants. In fact, purple sweet potatoes were the single largest portion of their calories, about 65%. And it was a natural experience. And what's interesting but sad is as their diet has changed and become more sad, standard American diet, the health problems that they never really dealt with are now appearing, which is also true in India and China. Take that rural diet that's almost all plant-based and relatively low in calorie and change it to the awful American diet that so many people eat, and you see disease start popping up. You see obesity, you see diabetes, you see cancer, you see heart disease. So we don't need more data. We have all the data we need.
Right.
Limiting or eliminating butter. Don't put butter in your coffee, ladies and gentlemen. It's vulgar and it's dangerous and it is unsupported by any science. Don't watch these manly men on Twitter eat meat 3 times a day and claim they're curing all kinds of illnesses. It's going to ruin their health if it doesn't ruin the planet first. And such trends that are out there that really make no sense. But we're all searching for the easy path to stay healthy.
Right. And I love that first example that you gave, because even if somebody is like, I'm not quite ready to go in 100% on that, just the fact that they've made changes throughout, they didn't go all in, but they just started making subtle changes in all aspects of their diet, whether like you said, adding in more oats or beans or increasing things like that, and the difference that it made. I just think that's amazing, because I think it gives people hope. If they're transitioning and they're going on a slow pace, every small step is such a huge step for their health long term.
Absolutely. And, it's powerful. And I mean, there are also the number one. So I'll introduce a name here because I'd love to share. One of the brightest lights for anybody listening saying, I'm so confused. I see this, I see that. Everybody's got an idea. That a name that most of us didn't know in the past, Dr. Valter Longo. That's Valter, first name, Longo, Longo, PhD, last name, who is the head of what's called a biogerontology research unit at University of Southern California in Los Angeles, but also spends about half a year in his native country of Italy. Has published a book called The Longevity Diet, and after you go get my book, The Plant-Based Solution, you should probably read his book too. And it's a wonderful book. But he talks about it's a big decision to eat healthy. It can be the difference between long life and short life. And when you're evaluating nutrition science, he calls it the 5 pillars of evidence for longevity. And he really, I believe, has no axe to grind. He's an academic scientist. He doesn't have a vitamin pill to buy. He has a book to buy, but all the proceeds from the book go to a charitable fund. He doesn't make a nickel on it. And he talks about these 5 pillars. And just quickly, what do people that are really old and healthy eat? What does the randomized studies show? What does the epidemiology like Okinawa show? What does the basic biochemistry do? What do we know about plants and slowing aging? And the answer is we know a lot. And finally, big picture stuff, the environment and animals and pollution. And when you stack all that up, the argument for a plant diet is enormous. And it's really, he calls it a 5-pillar argument because they're all there. Right. When he describes the ketogenic animal diet, the paleo animal diet, and others, he calls them kind of half a pillar diets because there's testimonial. I gave up, sugary foods. I started eating meat much more, and I lost weight. Well, that's a testimonial, but the amount of published science is very small.
Right. And I was going to actually ask you this in a little bit, so I'm glad you brought that up. But there are so many diets out there. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's keto, there's paleo, and I mean, obviously, there's testimonies for everything, right? But I mean, just
Right.
based on the volume of patients you've seen, based on the research that you've been a part of and read, and just all of that, like, I mean, could you ever recommend one of those for a patient? Do you see any circumstances to where you would do that?
Yeah, I want my patients, I want the public to do well. I would love one day to say that the entire world is plant-based. We got some ways to go before we see that. But what paleo does offer, at least as first described in the book by Lauren Cordain in the 1990s called The Paleo Diet, it's a book I actually keep in my medical office, is that it does eliminate all the processed junk food. All experts should agree, and I think we largely do agree. One of the biggest strains on the healthcare system in general, one of the biggest strains on your listeners' health, is the ease to pull up and order through the window processed foods rich in added salt, oil, sugar, poor quality meats, cheeses, antibiotics, hormones, dyes, additives. And the paleo diet says no to that, or traditionally it does, or originally it does. That's better. And that's better with, it's better for the Mediterranean diet. It's better for the DASH diet. It's better for the healthy versions of a whole food plant diet. And we do have to be careful that the vegan diet doesn't gravitate in terms of what the public identifies to a junk food vegan diet.
Right.
There actually was some, right now, a very hot eating plan is the ketogenic eating plan, which a variation on doing what Dr. Atkins talked about long ago. But now there's actually something called the junk food ketogenic diet. I mean, no carbs in your diet, but eat all crap. Well, obviously, that's a rather heinous plan. And we got to be careful ourselves that we educate and set the example that once in a blue moon, a vegan coney dog covered with some sort of cashew-based yellow cheese might be a fun treat, but we're still talking about predominantly eating salad bowls bigger than our head and eating, an apple and grapes and broccoli and real foods that don't require much explanation as to the ingredient list.
Right. So I shouldn't try to thrive on the Oreo diet, but what's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Yeah, no. And I mean, obviously it has so many benefits to all issues. I know we've been really focusing in on the heart, but I mean, most people come into your office, I'm sure they have concerns with their heart health, but are they just blown away once they start to make changes with their diet about the other stuff that maybe they didn't think that you could help with? It just starts to go away?
There are a lot of people that get multiple benefits out of a single improvement. And, when you start to add, make a serious decision, my breakfast, if I'm going to eat it, is going to be oatmeal with berries and walnuts, or it's going to be a smoothie with lots of greens and fruits and hemp and flax and, almond milk or soy milk or whatever. Goodbye goes the sausage egg McMuffin at the coffee shop or through the window. A lot of people will find there's so much more nutrition there. Energy goes up. Sometimes sleep improves. Sometimes bowel regularity improves. Some people, blood pressure and skip beats improve. Premenstrual cramps can improve because of the added magnesium in the diet. You might start to drop a few pounds as you eat more what we call nutrient-dense foods. A bowl of salad compared to a bowl of pasta smothered in cheese and butter. I mean, it's a whole different bowl. So yes, people, that's actually partly in my own personal story 41 years ago, when my wife and I, way back then, started to visit the salad bar. We actually felt better within a couple of weeks. We didn't know we didn't feel good, but all of a sudden, your stomach's great, you feel energetic, and you're sleeping good. So we actually did observe that, and so many people do too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And, if somebody was going to go plant-based in your office, what is some of the main steps that you're going to give them to really help set them up for success in that?
Right. And there are some people that should really do it quick, all of a sudden, and without compromise. But that's largely a small segment of, like in my practice, serious heart patients who are faced with the idea of bypass, faced with the idea of a stent, and are trying to reverse disease, like has been taught by Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Esselstyn, and such. For the rest of the world, most people will gravitate to a program that's a little slower and a little more step by step, inch by inch. It's a cinch, yard by yard. It's hard, is the words of a motivational speaker, Les Brown. So I will tell them three things. Number one, between now and the next time I see you, let's get off dairy. Dairy is easy. There's 15 kinds of substitutes that we want to call plant milk, and there's now a dozen kinds of substitutes for cheeses. Caution, still often a high calorie, high salt food, but they're substitutes. There are substitutes for coffee creamer and ice cream and cream cheese and whipped cream and basically everything under the sun. You'll find something that'll work for you, and usually that's a pretty good win. And for some people, it seals the deal because their very long history of heartburn or gas or constipation or acne also improves. So it's a double win. Number two, I ask them to eat an apple a day. Easiest thing. Everybody loves an apple. Crunch into an apple a day, because so many people, the fruit they eat is canned fruit, juice, sugary juice.
Right.
Number three, I ask them to try, and it's even easier now, I've used this for a long time, a bean burger, not a beef burger. It used to be go to the big box store and buy a pack of one of the brands, but now, although I'm not a fan of Impossible Burger and the Beyond Meat Burger, they're everywhere at TGIF and Red Robin and A&W and many other private restaurants. So give it a try. You're not going to die. You're going to realize that you might be able to wean yourself off of a heavy meat diet. And then we'll revisit those three. Next step after that would be probably ask them to start eating one giant salad a day.
Yeah, no, those are all obviously amazing steps, and they're going to see the benefits of that. Do you see common mistakes as people start to do this, or do you think the biggest mistake is they gravitate towards too much of the processed foods that are out there?
That would be the biggest one. The processed, right? And and that can be effective if you really have somebody hesitating or really into processed meat-based foods. I mean, there's, as we all know, there's some plant-based ribs and plant-based fake bacon and plant-based, bologna. And I can remember years ago eating, soy bologna slices. I haven't had that in a long time. But, there are some decent burgers and decent dogs and decent sausages that could well be the thing that seals the deal, that, I'm not giving up everything and it doesn't all have to be granola.
Right. Or iceberg lettuce or something that's super boring. Yeah, there's so many options out there. And, Dr. Kahn, I'm pretty sure that everybody that's plant-based gets this question. I get it a million times. I'm sure you get it a billion times if I'm getting that. But so, when you get those questions of where do you get your protein, that pushback from people, because that's usually I don't want to lack protein. Like, what do you tell those people when they have that kind of question?
I never get asked that. Okay, yes, of course I do. Usually the first question after I lecture and the hand goes up. So there's an interesting twist that we need to learn and be proud of, and it actually partly goes back to the same new bright light, Dr. Walter Longo. But there is some data that the calculations on what are our necessary protein intake for optimal health are actually much higher than is actually correct. That until we're old, until we're 70-ish and up, if anybody's listening and they're over 70 and I just offended you, I apologize. But, most of your listeners that are 25, 35, 45, there actually is strong science that your aging process. Think about great skin. Think about, your hair staying intact. Think about, your butt staying tight, Halle Berry, or whatever you want, whatever turns you on. That a low protein intake favors slowing aging. And actually, Dr. Longo estimates the amount of protein per day we need as about half of what the U.S. government has been teaching us, which is fascinating. And the second aspect is that this aging and pro-cancer, pro-disease aspect of high protein diets is true exclusively for animal-based protein diets. that it may be neutral to eat a high protein diet of plants. It's not neutral to eat a high protein diet of animals. It's actually promotes. So of course, there's always exceptions. These are just general and strong scientific trends. But it actually promotes premature aging, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. So we actually are now celebrating. So my answer to them would be, isn't it great? This is a naturally lower in protein diet that even bodybuilders and athletes and and long distance runners are thriving on, and it slows down aging. Aren't we lucky? That's research that was published in late 2016. It's human research. It's in eminent medical journals. So we got to redefine the paradigm until we're 70, 75. I'm 10 years away from 70, and I may actually start adding high quality plant-based protein powders to my smoothie more regularly then. Although you could do it now because plant proteins appear to be neutral.
Right.
But we do not need to be concerned. We want a lot of complex carbohydrate-based foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And even on like the aspect of somebody who's super active and athletic, you think the protein should stay the same level or a little bit above, or where would you?
There are some weightlifters, Tori Washington and Nick Delgado, and some of these beautiful, beautiful vegan bodybuilders that probably up it a bit with all plants. But you can be a long distance, thin athlete and get by just fine with predominantly complex carbohydrates. When you read a book like Thrive by Brandon Brazier,
right,
and read some of Rip Esselstyn's triathlon diet work and all, it's still not much different than the rest of us. It's just more.
Right. What is the best explanation for people who have because we're taught that plant proteins are an incomplete protein. What is your answer to that?
Yeah, it's pretty much an ancient concept that protein is made of amino acids, and it's kind of a strange thing. We eat an animal, their flesh is concentrated with protein. We then have enzymes released by our GI tract called proteases. We break the protein down into individual amino acids. We absorb them. We put them back together as proteins that we need, because we don't need cow proteins and pig proteins and lamb proteins.
Right.
And they're the same amino acids in plants. We do the same thing. You eat a chickpea, and proteases will break down the chickpea protein into individual amino acids, and we got to rebuild it. So it just, the only difference is that the concentration of the 20 or 21 amino acids is more favorable in plants than it is in animal products. There are individual amino acids have different responses in the body. One called leucine may accelerate aging. That's more concentrated in meat. One called methionine is concentrated in meat, and isoleucine. I mean, these are fancy words, but it's really the case. So only a very restricted plant diet, maybe of just fruit, and even those that are eating a 80 to 90% fruit diet thrive and do great. Some are very famous long distance runners, but there are a few foods that take that argument away in a heartbeat. I am a fan of eating some organic soy products during the week, whether that be tempeh, whether that be organic soy milk, whether that be edamame, whether that be tofu, as a condiment like it's used in Asia. And soy has all amino acids that the human body doesn't make on their own. And, it's a good quality food to include.
And to kind of go off of that, there's so much argument with soy, right? That you're getting so many unnecessary hormones. And I'm with you that I do eat things like tofu and tempeh throughout the week too. So whenever people are doubting that or think that they're getting too much hormone imbalance from taking those in, do you ever have concerns with that?
Too much is always possible, and there's too much of everything.
Right.
There's probably an exception to what I just said, but if you really go to the medical science, there's actually, as far as I can find, one case report of a gentleman, I'm blanking where for a minute, that drank 4 gallons of soy milk a day, I think. I think that's what it was. And he got man boobs and some erectile issues. But when he stopped, they all went away. It wasn't permanent. And there's one lady who ate so much bok choy that she actually developed serious thyroid disease, though she survived. I'm talking like 4 pounds of bok choy a day. So very few of us are doing either one of those or both. So I think we're in pretty good shape when we have a salad here with some tofu and a bok choy soup over here. We're in good shape.
Sure. And people obviously, if people make that argument, it's like, just think about how much unnecessary hormones are added into dairy products and into the meat products and on a such higher level.
Yes, absolutely. And the proof of the pudding, again, is the explosion of plant-based athletes in professional leagues like the NBA and some soccer leagues, occasional football player like Griff Whalen, I think with the Oakland Raiders now and such. And then, some of the others that aren't in the big leagues, but are long distance runners, Scott Jurek and Rich Roll. I mean, you can fuel a body that looks gorgeous and performs at a high level with the proteins that are broken down and found in plant food. So we can all relax.
Absolutely. And yeah, Dr. Kahn, let's chat about your new book a little bit, kind of walk people through what they can find in there and how it may be different than some of the books you've put out in the past.
Yes. Well, it is very different. So January 1, Sounds True Publishing, a very good publisher, published the book, The Plant-Based Solution. It is about 280 pages, but about half of it is a comprehensive but purposely rather short description of all the medical conditions and where plant nutrition has either been proven or suggested to help, from heart disease to type 2 diabetes to weight issues to autoimmune diseases, thyroid diseases. And then there's a chapter on the impact of choosing a plant diet on the environment, a chapter on choosing a plant-based diet on kindness and animal husbandry and animal rights, tied in a little bit to some religious philosophies and the great religions on that topic. And then the other half of the book are recipes, which I've never done before. So some recipes from the 3 restaurants I own called Green Space Cafe, 2 in Detroit area, and 1 in Austin, Texas called ATX Food Co. on Barton Springs Road. And the rest from the Kahn Kitchen, just at home with an eating plan. So, new and fresh recipes, simple recipes. You don't have to be a culinary institute to manage, and some references to get more information. But the feedback has been, this is a book I could read in, a day or two. It bolstered my medical knowledge and my commitment to do this for health, for the planet, for the animals. And you gave me a couple recipes I just hadn't used before.
It's amazing. And yeah, guys, if you're listening, definitely go pick up that book. I'm sure it's on, is it on Audible yet as well, or just paperback?
It is not on Audible. We're waiting for Audible.
Gotcha. No, yeah, guys, definitely go pick that up. Dr. Kahn, what's your favorite recipe from the book?
Actually, the simplest ones that are there. I mean, I love overnight oats. I love chia pudding. I love superfood salad. Just, again, I really try and eat one salad bigger than my head with all kinds of add-ons. Anything that has arugula in it is my favorite. So I love them all.
I love it. No, and I'm excited for people to go check that out. And yeah, so Dr. Kahn, is there anything else you're working on in the future that you just want to put out there and share with people, or just continue to promote your new book and just put out as much helpful content out there as you can?
Yeah, I appreciate all that. And, probably the presence of a green space food truck in Austin, Texas, which is a couple months into it. It's amazing food, all plant-based, all organic, a combination of 2 young culinary people in Austin under the name ATX Food Co. and Green Space Cafe. And we're getting incredible feedback that, we're really up the game for healthy eating in Austin. That's just great. It's a great city.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm actually going to be in Austin some after the new year. So I'll have to go check it out, and I'll keep you posted how it goes. I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Barton Springs Road is where everybody hangs for the Austin city limits and such. And,
Perfect.
it's a great location. The truck doesn't move around. It has a supremely exposed spot where everybody walks by.
Perfect. Awesome. Excited to check that out. And yeah, so Dr. Kahn, what is the best way for people to give you a follow on social media or any websites that you have? That way they can keep up with everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and I do a lot, and I appreciate that. But I'm pretty active. There's one central website, drjoelkahn.com, and Dr. is DRJOELKAHN.com. And there's links to all the other sites like Facebook, like Twitter, like Instagram. My handle is DRJKAHN, and I mean Twitter 50 times a day, Instagram once or twice, and Facebook usually once a day posting on my doctor professional page. It's always about new information, new science, new tips. Keep it simple.
Love it. Awesome. I'll put those in the show notes. That way people can just go click and give you an ad. And yeah, Dr. Kahn, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's been something that's been your biggest takeaway on your journey so far. But if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
That's a good question. Eat a salad bigger than your head every day. I've said it once, I'll say it again. You can't go wrong with the nutrition, the nutrient density, the boost in your microbiome and GI tract, your brain health, and make it colorful and make it crunchy.
Awesome. I love it. I love it, Dr. Kahn. Just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I mean, your work is super inspiring, and I know it's going to change so many people's lives. So just thank you for all that you do, and thank you for taking time to come on.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to chatting with you some more and getting to know you down there in Orlando.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Dr. Kahn. He's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give him a follow on social media to keep up with everything that he's been working on. You can find his social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drcaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEYJOHNSON.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Dr. Kahn's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Dr. Kahn, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to check out patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson to learn more about how you can support the Unlock Wellness podcast. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.